I got to bring the old Jarhead's Jeep out. Gotta love that. Love driving that Jeep. It's awesome. And we're gonna go do some wheeling here in the near future with it. Supposed to be going to Tillamook and doing Cedar Tree and fire break number 5. And I got a couple things to do to it. You know, the usual stuff, you know, change the oil and just check fluids and all that stuff. But I also need to move my front brake lines to the other side of the shocks since I have the Metalcloak what they call their True Dual Rate suspension. It's a 2.5-inch lift. And when you do that, you turn the front shocks 90 degrees on the lower mount. It's a better setup than the stock Jeep setup. And I thought I would talk this trip. I might do a little wheeling around the property just for fun. But I thought I would talk a little bit about my suspension and how it's done. We put it in Labor Day weekend last year. We're several months into it now, and I gotta tell you, I'm really happy with it. We've had it out at the dunes, had it up here several times, been on some rough terrain with it, and I'll tell you, that dual rate suspension really, it's great. It definitely absorbs the impact, especially when out in the dunes and you're going straight down, or you go almost straight into a dune before you go up it. It absorbs that really, really well. And some of my past videos, you may have seen that. All right, so I've had this rock out here for years, and I've been wanting to test out the suspension a little bit. I just haven't had a place to really kind of flex it out much. You know, I mean, we've done some off-roading, but nothing extreme. We're not into extreme or anything like that. But this rock here is, you know, it's on a bit of a hill. It's above my knee height. So that guy there, that right there is above my knee height, and then you've got a little bit of a hill here. I was trying to get up on top of it, but without someone to guide me, I was kind of coming up over here more, and I know I can get right up on top of it. I just haven't had a chance. And then on this side, of course, you know, you've got a bit of a ramp to get up on here, and I got right up on top easy. Actually, it wasn't no big deal, and I'm actually pretty sure I could just crawl right over that and keep going. But you know, without someone to kind of watch for you and guide you over it, make sure you're in the right place, you could end up with the, you know, in the wrong spot. And I'm not interested in breaking the Jeep or anything like that. I know it'll do it. It'll run over that no problem, and I don't think that's an issue. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that Metalcloak True Dual Rate suspension. I put quite a few miles on it since I put the suspension on. I guess it's been about 8 months, and I'll tell you, I like it. I like it a lot. It definitely absorbs the shock coming up here, even with the tires at 36 PSI. It's just a 3-mile road. It's a rough road, and I ran it up to the neighbors another mile, which is even rougher, even disconnected the sway bar going up there. It's pretty rough going up there. Even with those tires, it really absorbs the shock of the road really nicely. I really like these springs. My wife has an AEV lift. Hers is the 4-door, so it's a heavier Jeep. It feels better on the road, but I think that's just the difference between a 2-door and a 4-door. Off-road, though, hers is a lot stiffer, less comfortable, rides more like a truck. It's probably a great suspension, soften the tires up, and I'm sure that AEV suspension is really good suspension. No knocking against AEV. However, I will tell you that even without the air pressure down on these tires, coming up the hill here, it's a breeze. And you know, it just rides up over everything just fine. It's beautiful. I love it. Those real long sway bar drop links, I was kind of wondering about those when I first put it on, and you can see I've got to push this rubber back on here. I actually pulled that off and retightened that up because I didn't make it tight enough. But you know, these guys are long for a reason. I don't like the way this can ride up and rub a little bit in here. It does seem to clear the metal here, so I'm not too concerned about it, but it's close. It's very close, and you can see they rub into this here. Also looks, well, this is rubbing here, but I do see a little shine here, and that's because this is actually hitting there when I get into real heavy flex. And so I do think that this needs to get carved out a little bit more to give a little more clearance for these guys here. Now, Metalcloak says that you need these long ones so that your sway bar doesn't flip when it's disconnected. I have no doubt that that's the truth, but I do think I need to make some clearance right here. I don't think there's enough. I can see it's a little shiny, so we're rubbing on that. We can look from the other side. You know, it could be rubbing in there. Without a light, it's hard to see. Now the brakes, I've mentioned this before. That brake line there needs to come and run around the backside, not the inside. It can get into the spring. So we don't want that to get into the spring, and that's the only thing I really need to fix. Otherwise, man, I love this suspension. I do have the Rancho 9000s on here instead of the Metalcloak shocks. I had the Ranchos already. I like them. I do like the adjustability of the Ranchos, and they seem to work fine. Maybe if I was, you know, running the Rubicon Trail or something like that regularly, mosquitoes are getting me out here, then maybe I might change that, but I like them. They work, and I can dial them up a little bit heavier for when we're overlanding and I'm carrying a little more weight. I know ultimately the weight's carried by the springs, not the shocks. The shocks are just there to dampen the springs, but being able to tighten up the shocks does help when I'm carrying more weight, because that tends to make things a little bouncier. So far so good. I'm happy with that setup. And I talked to Metalcloak about springs, and they said, well, you know, you could go with a 3.5 inch instead of a 2.5 inch rear spring, but I wanted to keep things pretty level, which it is. And that's kind of my goal. Keeping things level like that works out really good for me. So, Metalcloak, good job. I'll give you 2 thumbs up, but I'm holding the camera with one of them, so I can't. I like it. It's a great suspension. Super happy that I've gone with it. I'd flexed it out a little bit today, just kind of for fun. I'm not doing rock crawling, but occasionally we'll get into something where we might flex a little bit, and it's nice to see that I could flex it that much. I mean, I probably was coming up over 24 inches there. I'd have to put a tape measure on it, and maybe I will. Whew, these mosquitoes are going to eat me alive, though. Holy smokes, hey? There you have it, folks. The old Jarhead Jeep Metalcloak True Dual Rate suspension. It's not the game changer suspension. I think that one comes with the lower control arms and maybe rears. This one comes with the adjustable upper control arms and the adjustable front track bar, as well as the brackets to drop your brake lines. And then it also came with brake lines. I can't remember if I ordered them separate, or I think it's part of the kit, as well as the brackets to turn your shocks 90 degrees at the bottom. So I really like all that. The only thing that I would suggest that Metalcloak should add, or you need to buy if you get this, is a relocation bracket for the bottom of the brake lines to get them behind the shocks. Now, I could have just installed them behind the shock. I don't like the idea of them rubbing against something, so I think they should have something to kind of push them out there, but I may just stick them behind there if the Terraflex ones I got don't work. It also comes with the rear track bar realignment bracket and the drop links for the rear brakes, and of course, you know, springs front and rear, as well as the bump stops. I put in 2 inches of bump stops front and rear. My shocks are longer. They're the 2.5 inch lift shocks of the Rancho 9000. So with a 2.5 inch lift, shocks for 2.5 inches, I went ahead and put 2 inches of bump stops in anyway. I don't think I needed that much. The jury's still out. But I don't think I'm going to bottom those shocks out with those. So, not with the lift and everything else. I just don't think it will. I could be wrong. It rides great on the road. Rides great off-road. I've had it in the dunes a few times. Does awesome. Not a lot of hard off-roading, meaning, you know, rough roads, rock trails, that kind of stuff. We're going to do a little bit of that here in a couple weeks. But, we'll do Cedar Tree and Firebreak number 5, and I'll let you know how it does there. But so far, I'm loving it. We pushed it a little bit on that big rock today. Not nearly as much as you could, and if I had someone here to ground guide me, I'd run right up over that guy, I think, just to see how she does. But it does fine. The only challenge I had today, honestly, was my handbrake wasn't holding the Jeep very well. It needs to be adjusted, and so when I got up on the rock, if I pull the handbrake out, it'll just roll back as soon as I get off the brake. You got to be on the brake, otherwise it won't stay there. So I got to fix that handbrake. If I get that fixed, then, you know, maybe I can do a shot like that where I get up on something and actually get a good picture out of it. I tried to do it with the GoPros instead. Also, I'll show you those bump stops. You can see them right here. I just realized if I look right here, there you can see the 2 inch pucks right here. And of course we got the drop length. You got that collapsible spring, adjustable track bar, and then you've got your adjustable control arms up top. And that's it for those, other than the drop brackets on the brakes. But again, this brake needs to get pushed behind that shock, and so we're going to do that so it's not in that spring before we go do any more serious wheeling. Okay, the old Jarhead's back's out, so it's time to take a break, go in and get away from these mosquitoes. And I got a couple things to do before leaving the cabin tomorrow, so we'll do that. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and get cleaned up and get out of the mosquitoes. Pour myself an adult beverage, so y'all take care.